All right, we're here in the dungeon, as it were. This is where you actually write your books,
This
right?
is it.
Or everything. Do you
Right
write your
here.
columns here too?
Well, the columns, if they're live at a game, then obviously I'm at the game.
Well, like
But
your
if
Sunday column?
I'm doing a Sunday column, yeah, a lot of it will be done here too. I built this office, I want to say about 5 years ago. Before, I used to work down all the way down the basement here, like with no windows or anything. That's where I wrote Tuesdays with Maury. And I mean, it's basement. It's like, right outside the boiler room. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I said, well, maybe we could make an office that had some windows in it. So we constructed where we are right now, and this is my lair.
So you can. So how much time do you spend in there? Do you just come down here to work?
Yeah, or read. As you could see, if we were describing it to everybody, it's like a library in here, and there's just bookshelves all the way around the 3/4 of the room. I wish I could say I've read all these books, but some I've read and some I'm planning to read, but they're all part of my library. And then there's a very, very long desk, that stretches, all the way across the
That's
back
got to
part
be
of the room.
25, 30 feet long.
Yeah, and every inch of it is filled, as you see, right? It's filled with books, it's filled with papers, it's filled with notes, it's filled with projects that I'm working on, and the computer that I'll write, that I write my books or my stories or my columns on. And yeah, sometimes it'll be columns, but lately it's been this book, which has been basically consuming every spare minute of my time.
Now, you obviously, most people that know you know that you keep yourself very busy, and when you have a spare moment, you usually fill it with something. Now, you're going to be off the air from WJR till probably the first part of February, right?
That's right, because I have a deadline of this book at the end of January, first part of February.
Now, is it an actual deadline?
Yeah.
They're saying it's got to be in at this time.
I don't know that they would chop my hands off if it wasn't delivered by 5 o'clock on the day that it's supposed to be delivered, but I'd get a phone call. Let's put it that way. And, it's not fair. I've had 3 years to put this together. And, the publishers are the publishers in the book business are much more respectful and gentle and human than, let's say, the editors in the newspaper business. Editors in the newspaper business, things not there. Where is it? Hurry up! Gotta go! They don't care who you are. They're going to talk to you the same way. The publishers are like, he's thinking. Let's not bother him. He's thinking. He's down to a year. We still don't know exactly how he's going. Should we call? No. He's still thinking. He's got 9 months. Shouldn't we call? Well, maybe we can get somebody we know to call him, and we'll, maybe. And then, you start to get within like 2 or 3 months. They sort of want to know, are you making any progress? and so I don't think it's fair to push a deadline on a book because they have given me enough time to do it.
You said 3 years? Is that normal?
No, that's actually long.
That's a long time.
I've been very blessed that I have not been under the gun as many of my peers are, and in fact, peers who I consider, far superior to me in terms of not only success in the book world, but productivity in the book world, from Stephen King to Scott Turow, Ridley Pearson, any of these people who have regular contracts, John Grishams of the world. They are supposed to put a book out every year. And they're supposed to put it out at the same time every year. The book business is very oriented towards John Grisham. I think it's a certain week in either January or February. Every year he has a new book out. And that weekend, it's not like the movies. They know, don't anybody else release a book that week, because that Tuesday he's coming out with his, and that's John Grisham's time. And other people who are like that, Janet Ivanovich, or James Patterson publishes 6 books a year, 6 different books a year. So somebody like me, to publish a book once every 3 years is a luxury, and it was 6 years between Tuesdays with Maury and the 5 People You Meet in Heaven, and that's unheard of. I've been, lucky that I've just had publishers who have said, well, he wants to think about what he wants to do, and he doesn't want to just cookie cutter it out, so we'll give him that kind of time. But most authors are on it absolutely every year, got to get it in, because they want that, regularity of readership to expect. So I think I'd be pushing my good graces to say, now that you've given me 3 years, how about another 6 months?
With everything that you do in your life and with all of the loves that you have, is writing is writing a book your favorite way to write? I know writing's your number one thing, but is it a book? Is it a column? I mean, does it depend on the topic?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what happens with a column is it's fun to write because you get to see it the next day, and you get the reaction from it the next day. And so you're on the cusp of what people are talking about generally, especially if it's a sports thing and you were at the game and it's at night. That is almost as close as you can get to real time in the newspaper business. So a game ends at 11 o'clock at night. Now you have to kill yourself to get the column in. I mean, it's ridiculous deadlines. You have to write in 5 minutes. That's a story in and of itself. But you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, it's on your porch, and it's on everybody else's porch, and that's an instantly satisfying way of writing. You wrote it, they read it. They talk about it. It's all in the same cycle. It's still in your head, and people are saying, hey, I just read your column, and a good thing, by the same token, it disappears after about 20 minutes. It's gone, and people don't really remember that column for very long. They're on to somebody else's column, the next day's column, whatever. A book, it's hard to feel that satisfaction day after day as you're working on it because nobody's reading it. And it's just you, and you're alone in this cave down here where I am, and it's you and the words, and you and the words, and you and the words, and you and the character, and you and the story. And there are many times where you wonder, where am I going here? And is anybody going to like this? And God, this is such a long time. I've been working on this, and nobody's read it. And what if people don't enjoy it? And, you finally come out with the thing, and it's just a big wet firecracker, and you've spent all this time putting time in. So it can be very unsatisfying in terms of a daily thing. You have to be very disciplined to write books, and I say that by admiring people who do it other than me. I don't, it's just that's just the world that you're in. It's like you can't be a swimmer if you don't have good lungs. You can't be a writer if you don't have a lot of self-discipline because it's hard to write a book. But when it comes out, and when it starts to be read, the satisfaction of it is much longer if it hits people than a column, and much more satisfying. I still have people talking to me about Tuesdays with Maury, and I wrote that 15 years ago. So 15 years is a long time for, no one remembers a column from 15 years ago, but they'll remember a book. So that's kind of the biggest difference.
So Tuesdays with Maury and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way or a bad way, it was kind of a fluke. You did it for a particular reason. Mm-hmm. There was your old professor. I'm going to do this. He needs some help with his medical bills. Let's do this, save his family some money. And then it kind of obviously took on a life of its own. And then you have a Little Faith, which is a specific story about two very, very good men.
Right.
Now, when you write other books like The Five People You Meet in Heaven and For One More Day and things like that, I guess when the publisher comes to you, do they want that same type of thing, or can you go in a completely different direction? I mean, your thought process, do you want to stay along the same lines? Do you want to change it up? Do you want to,
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, and the answer to it is sort of a timeline answer. When I wrote Tuesdays with Maury, nobody wanted it, and I had to go door to door and try to find anyone who was interested in publishing it. At that time, I was perceived as a sports writer, and all they really wanted to see from me was another sports book, and so the idea of my writing a book about a guy who was dying or what the significance of life was through that, the reaction was, well, who are you to write a book like that? And I got turned down most places I went and had to basically settle when I finally found one place that was willing to do it, was sort of their terms, and that was fine. I was just happy to have somebody to publish it, period. It was a one-book arrangement. All right, we'll publish this one book. We're hoping it comes out. We don't want to invest in you as like a writer for the future of this kind of thing, but we'll do one book with you. After the book came out and after Tuesdays with Maury became a successful book, then like in sports, you have a good rookie season, then people want to negotiate with you. If it was a 1-year rookie deal, then they want to negotiate with you for your, second and third year, and they want to do a package deal. So it was that kind of a thing where Then I went and found another publisher who wanted to do a couple of books. And in that case, most of the publishers who wanted me to do another Tuesdays with Maury. They wanted Wednesdays with Maury, basically. If I could have come and said, there's stuff I forgot to tell you about Maury, here's another Maury book, they would have loved it. I wanted to do something different because I knew I could never match that book. And so my idea was a novel, and this sort of magical novel. And a lot of them said, yeah, well, sure, that's very interesting. But wouldn't you want to do a nonfiction book first? And that was sort of most of the publishers didn't want to deal with me if the novel was going to be the first book. And the publisher I ended up with, Hyperion, I told them the story of the 5 people you meet in heaven in a little room with 4 or 5 of their people. And when I finished telling the story, and I ended the story with this little girl who says to Eddie, the character in 5 People You Meet in Heaven, that the hands that he felt when he pushed the little girl out of the way for the accident, he thought that he was pushing the girl out of the way, and those were her hands. And this little girl in heaven says, no, those were my hands. I was bringing you to heaven. And one of the editors burst into tears while I was in the room. And I said to myself, okay, maybe this is a good story. And I wanted to work with that editor. And so when I left, I told my literary agent, I said, let's go with these people and let's get that woman as my editor because she clearly got it. And that's what we did. And they were one of the few publishers who wanted me to write a novel first. When the 5 People You Meet in Heaven came out and it was successful, then the rules were changed again. Then it was, okay, what do you want to do next? Then it wasn't so much like, we'll tell you what we want. It was more like, your instincts are obviously okay. You've had 2 books in a row that people have embraced. What do you want to do next? And so at that point, it was kind of up to me. But by the same token, now you've had 2 books that are kind of along the same lines, although they're very different in style. One's a novel and one's nonfiction. But they're both kind of about, life, death, what's important. You kind of boxed into that. I don't think anybody would have wanted me to publish a space novel, or a dirty sexual romp. Right. So, I ended up doing For One More Day, which was kind of like that. And that was a novel, but it was also about, a woman who comes back after she's died. And then Have a Little Faith, which was nonfiction and a book I really had always wanted to do about faith at some point in my life. And I'm very proud of that book and how that book was received, even though it was really about something. Again, there was somebody dying and it was a eulogy, but it wasn't really. It was really more about faith. Now, what I'm working on here and what I'm trying to finish up here desperately is another novel that's basically along the lines of the 5 People You Meet in Heaven. It's magical. The story of it is magical. It's a real fantasy. It's probably the biggest in terms of like scope of a book that I've ever written. Although it's not going to be long, but it takes place in this whole sort of magical world.
Okay, let's leave that as a tease.
Okay.
Because I want to finish this first podcast. I'm Ray Prosser along with Mitch Albom. We're going to continue our next one. We're going to talk more about the book. We're going to, hopefully, give some tips to young writers that are listening out there and just some of your thoughts on the writing process and some things you'd like to throw to any up-and-coming writers
I can't
out
wait.
there.
When are we going to do this?